Hello, in this video, I'm gonna talk about the top 5 mistakes I see Alaska cruisers make. They pick the wrong itinerary, they pack the wrong clothes, they go the wrong time of year, they bring the wrong tech, and they come with the wrong attitude. I'm Angie, I'm a travel agent who's been on 123 cruises, and I use my personal expertise and experience to help travelers like you make great decisions about their upcoming cruise vacation. If you'd like to put my expertise to work for you, email Angie@tripswithangie.com and ask about current offers. Now let's talk about Alaska. So I've just returned from 3 weeks on 2 different cruise lines in Alaska, and hearing a lot of people talk about their experience, what they wish they would have known, I've consolidated that into what I think are the top 5 mistakes Alaska cruisers make. Number 1, the wrong itinerary. I think the itinerary is the most important choice you make when you choose an Alaska cruise, and this is where I help my clients the most. The itinerary matters more than the ship. That might be a very controversial statement, but I will stand by it. So let's talk about it. Think about what you want to see on your cruise and figure out if the itinerary matches that. For instance, I recommend all first-time Alaska cruisers go to Glacier Bay. It is an extraordinary experience for wildlife and glaciers. The national park rangers come on board. There's wonderful narration as you go through. You learn a lot and you see a lot. It's really a lot of bang for your buck. In terms of the other ports, if you want to see whales, you want to make sure your itinerary includes Juneau and or Icy Strait Point. If you want to see bears, you want to head to Sitka and Ketchikan. If you want the most shopping opportunities, you want to head to Ketchikan and Juneau. There's a question of whether or not your ship should be round trip from Seattle, round trip from Vancouver, or a one-way between Vancouver and either Seward or Whittier in Alaska. That matters. When it comes to round trip Seattle, a lot of people like that option because it has shorter flights or easier flights from within the US, but that can be a bumpier ride on your first and last sea day. Round trip from Vancouver gets you to the Inside Passage faster and has historically a few less bumps than coming out of Seattle, but you 100% need a passport, and the flights can be a little more difficult or complicated. You're more likely to have a stop going from Vancouver back to the US. One-way cruises are great if you want to see the interior of Alaska, because remember, Alaska cruises only go to one small part of Alaska, and that's the Inside Passage. If you want to see places like Mount Denali, Denali National Park, Anchorage, Wrangell Elias National Park, Exit Glacier, Seward, the Kenai Peninsula, you're going to need to take a one-way cruise. There's pros and cons to that. There's pros and cons to whether or not you should start in Vancouver and head north, or do your land trip first and then head south. So those are all very important things to consider as you're figuring out what your itinerary is going to be. Number 2, you pack the wrong clothes. Now, it's going to rain. Where you're sailing is one of the world's largest temperate rainforests. It will likely rain every day on your Alaska cruise, so it's absolutely critical you have waterproof shoes, hopefully waterproof or at least water-resistant pants, and a really good waterproof jacket or plan for the rain. One thing people do wrong is they bring too many warm clothes. I know that sounds weird, but people think Alaska, they think it's gonna be super cold, so they pack a lot of super warm clothes. Well, the thing about Alaska is it varies widely as you move between your cruise. So you could have days that are super rainy and windy and 38 degrees, and in the same week, you could end up in a port that's 75 degrees and sunny for part of the day. So the key to Alaska is layers. You want to bring lots of layers so that you can deal with really cold mornings, kind of warm afternoons, and chilly evenings versus bringing your heaviest coat or your heaviest clothes. You want to be able to adapt to varying temperatures. So for us, what we do is we bring a pair of long underwear, we bring a waterproof pair of pants, we bring a fleece pair of pants, we bring a regular, like, active fit, I think they call them, pair of pants. We also bring shorts. We bring short sleeve dry fit, long sleeve dry fit, long underwear, long sleeve, and then a couple fleeces, and then our outer waterproof layer. So you want to have lots of options so you can adapt to the varying temperatures. Number 3, you booked the wrong time of year. Alaska sailings can go from as early as April to as late as October. The main cruise lines generally go May to September, and there are variations within that timeline for both weather and wildlife. The best weather is usually in July heading into early August. That just means there's a little more sunshine then and a little less rain. It will still rain. The best time to see bears is later in the season because bears need salmon. So in order to increase your chance of viewing bears, you want to make sure the salmon are running, which means that the salmon are heading from the ocean up the local rivers to spawn. That's what brings the bears to the river. That usually happens in later season, so July and August. So you want to double check the ports where you want to go that the salmon will actually be running then. And Alaska's fisheries department does put out predictions of when the salmon are going to run at different rivers, so you can check that in advance, and we do check that. The other piece of the puzzle is whales. So you have different whale experiences depending on the season. So in May and June, you might be more likely to see bubble feeding, which is when the whales work cooperatively to stun fish to feed on them in places like Icy Strait Point because the whales are so hungry. Whales will be migrating from Mexico and Hawaii, where they haven't eaten over the entire winter, because they've been breeding. Then they will come north into Alaska, where they will start feeding, and they will be starving. So you're more likely to see bubble feeding earlier in the season because they're hungrier and more likely to work together. You also get to see juvenile whales, which is fun. So like the mother and babies are more likely to be at the surface. You may see some jumping, but that's really rare no matter the time of year. We were lucky enough to see some in Icy Strait Point. Hopefully you saw my little short about that, but that's kind of all time of year. And then as you go later in the season, the calves are getting more independent. So that's also fun to watch. If you're interested in waterfalls, those will be earlier in the season because the glaciers are starting to melt. They've pretty much dried up usually by the end of July into August. If you're really into ice and icebergs, again, that's going to be earlier in the season as the glaciers are starting to melt. There's lots of calving, there's lots of ice as you head towards the different glaciers. But that can also mean some areas may be cut off. It's harder to get in to Endicott Arm and near the Hubbard Glacier during the early season because the ice may not have melted enough yet to allow for a full pass. May and September may present the opportunity for the northern lights. In order to see the northern lights, you need a solar flare, you need a clear sky, and you need darkness. Darkness is the biggest challenge in Alaska over the summer. So if you go at the beginning of the season or the end of the season, chances are the sky may get dark enough for you to see the aurora borealis or northern lights. Number 4, wrong tech. So it is really important to bring a pair of binoculars to Alaska. It is like my must bring list. We have a pair of waterproof. They were less than $100. They work great. You want to use them ahead of time. Make sure you understand how to use them, how to focus them. You will need binoculars if you want to see wildlife, because as you're sailing, you will see whales in the distance. They tend to be closer to the shoreline because they can feed a little bit easier that way, and you want those binoculars to like zoom in. Also, you can play my favorite game, log or otter. So you do need binoculars because you are high on a cruise ship. That's something a lot of people forget, is how high you are. You might be 10 stories high on a cruise ship. So you need those binoculars to make sure what you're looking at is actually an otter and not a log floating along. You also want to make sure your tech is waterproof. So bring a waterproof case for your phone, maybe bring a waterproof GoPro, depending on the type of activities you're going to do. And of course, as I mentioned before, waterproof shoes. Please bring waterproof shoes. And last, wrong attitude. So some folks on the cruise I was just on were complaining about the rain. They were complaining about they didn't see any wildlife. That's the wrong attitude. I think you have to go in knowing it's gonna rain and being mentally prepared for that. You also have to go in knowing that wildlife is iffy. These are wild animals. They are not on a schedule for you to see. If you want to have a guaranteed sighting in terms of bears especially, there are several ports that have excursions to sanctuaries where you will definitely be guaranteed to see a bear because they live there and there's a fence and they can't go much further. There are ports like Juneau and Icy Strait Point that offer whale guarantees, where if you don't see a whale on that whale watch, you'll either get a full refund or $100 back. But in general, any wildlife sighting is a miracle to me because you never know what you're gonna see. And so it's really important to go in with a good attitude, both about the weather and about the wildlife sightings. And the other thing is you have to be willing to look for the wildlife. So we spend hours steering out into the ocean as we go through different areas that might potentially have wildlife. It's not one of those things where you can just hope that you look up from your dinner table and see an orca going by. Though that can happen, but if you really want to see wildlife, you have to be dedicated to looking for it. So those are my top 5 things I think people do wrong on their Alaska cruises: the wrong itinerary, the wrong clothes, the wrong time of year, the wrong tech, and the wrong attitude. What do you think? What has been your experience with Alaska cruises?